Good morning, you guys. So today we're going to be talking about sourdough bread. I started making sourdough bread a couple years ago, but it took me a very long time to get confident to even try it because of all the different recipes that are out there. And there's just a lot of ways to do it. And it was extremely intimidating when it didn't need to be. So it took me a few years to find a recipe that I was actually confident with and came out every time I made it. I've probably tried since starting sourdough. I've made bread for a while now, but since starting sourdough and making my own starter and that whole adventure, there were times where I think I tried 10 to 15 different recipes, and there's so many ways to do it, so many different tips and tricks that really complicated it more for me. So I found this recipe and I've been using it ever since, and it's come out perfect every time. And you get to skip the hassle of feeling like you're in bondage to it, because it was literally a 24-hour ordeal. And if you're a mom or you're working or you have different things going on in your life that don't allow you to babysit your starter for an entire 24 hours before you could put it in the oven, I just didn't have the time for it. I have 6 kids running around. I'm homeschooling, sports and activities and just different things that we needed to be at didn't allow me to do my stretch and folds when I needed to, or I'd let it overproof and then it just didn't come out how I wanted to. So I thought I would share with you guys my very simple, same day, no kneading, no science experimental, just simple sourdough loaf bread that will be ready by dinner time. Not tomorrow's dinner, but today's dinner. So I'll have the recipe down in the description for you guys if you would like to screenshot it or copy that down. So there are 4 ingredients for this, which I know a lot of them are simple like that, but just stick along. So we have 2 cups warm water, not too hot. We don't want to kill any of the good bacteria in the sourdough starter. So we have 2 cups of just warm water. We will need ½ a cup of a bubbly, very active sourdough starter. You will need 4 cups of a high protein, unbleached, because the bleach in the flour has the possibility of killing the bacteria in our sourdough that we want to keep. So unbleached flour and salt. That is it. We will need a tablespoon of salt. So first we're going to start with our 2 cups of warm water, and we're going to add our ½ a cup of sourdough starter. And we're going to whisk this together till we get like a milky, watery substance. Just 1 second. Where are you? Looking for my whisk. Okay. So we're just gonna whisk that together. And now that we have whisked it together, and it looks like pretty much milky water, we're gonna add our tablespoon of salt. And a lot of people like to add this after the dough's been sitting for a while. I add it to my mixture immediately after I get it together. So a tablespoon of salt. Just gonna get that salt to dissolve in there a little bit. And then we're going to add our 4 cups of flour. And for my starter, I've seen a lot of people feed their starter early in the morning and then wait for it to double and then start their loaf. And maybe that's what makes it take so long, and you'd have to wait for over the day because you really don't get started until what, late morning, early afternoon. But I feed my starter the night before so that in the morning it is hungry again, but it has doubled in size, so it's still very active. So after you get all of those ingredients together in your bowl, you're just gonna mix. You don't need to knead it, you don't need to get your hands all dirty. You just wanna combine it as well as you can. And this is gonna form a very shaggy, kind of dry dough, but that's okay because it will all come together. So we have a very shaggy dough. And when I say shaggy, I mean very shaggy. Now that we have mixed our dough, it is very shaggy, not much shape to it yet or anything of the sort. We are going to cover this and let it sit on the counter for an hour and a half. And I just buy these little, I call them shower caps, but I know that these aren't shower caps. These are for covering up food. And I just cover it like that. And I let it sit here for an hour and a half, go about my day, start my homeschooling, breakfast, anything that you need to start in the morning, and just leave it there. We'll see you guys back when it's time to start our stretch and folds. So our sourdough loaf has been sitting on the counter for an hour and a half, and we're going to start our first stretch and fold. While doing this, so the dough doesn't stick to your hands really bad, I like to get my hands just a little bit wet. You don't want it too wet where it's going to get slimy, just enough so that the dough doesn't stick to you. Now when you're doing your stretch and folds, you're going to do it 4 times. So you're going to pull your dough up like this, stretch it, and just fold it over. And then you're going to turn your bowl 90 degrees, stretch it, fold it over. You're going to stretch it, fold it over, stretch it, and fold it over. And that is it. We're going to cover it and let it sit for another 30 to 40 minutes and then start our second stretch and fold. Okay, I wet my hands a little bit, and we're going to do our last set of stretch and fold. As you can see, the dough is a lot smoother than it was when we first started. It's not shaggy anymore. It's come together really nicely. And this will be our last stretch and fold. This is stretch and fold number 4. They say to do it 3 to 4 times, so if you can only get 3 in, it's fine. But every time you do it, the dough becomes a lot more smooth and incorporated. Now that we did our last stretch and fold, we're going to let it sit on the counter for 3 to 7 hours and let it do its last bulk fermentation. So my bread loaf has been proofing on the counter for, I'd say, about 4.5 hours. So now we are going to take it out and shape it. Now to shape this, you're just gonna put it into kind of a rectangle. You're gonna fold over, take the other side, fold over, and then you're going to roll on top of each other. So now we need to create tension. I push forward, pull back. Push forward and pull back. And I just do that until I feel like the dough has gotten a lot more firm. You never want to rip your dough. Ignore my pink, very overstimulating countertops, please, because farmhouse renovations, we're getting there. You don't ever want your dough to rip. So I'm just going to do it until I start to see the tension build up on my loaf. And I want it to really just hold its form. Now we are going to take a piece of parchment paper. We're going to put our loaf on top of that piece of parchment paper and put it back in our bowl. Now it needs to sit on the counter for its last rise for an hour and a half. And then once we're done doing our last rise, I will come back and show you how we put this in the oven to bake for dinner. At this time, while we're waiting for our loaf to do its last rise and proof on the counter, you want to preheat your oven to 450 with your Dutch oven or bread oven inside so that it gets a chance to warm up. I'm gonna cover this back up and push it to the side. Okay, we're getting ready to put our loaf in the oven to start baking. So I like to take my loaf out, put it on the counter, and dust it with flour. Dust it with flour so that we can get ready to score it. And I know there's a ton of amazing ways to score it to make it look all fancy, but it does not have to be that complicated. You can literally just score it once on the side so that there is. I definitely need to get a sharper lame so it has a vent like that, an area for all of the heat to escape. So now that we have put the flour on top of it and dusted and scored our bread, we're going to put it into our preheated bread oven. So let me get that out of the oven. Okay, our Dutch oven is nice and hot, so I'm going to drop my loaf inside. Be careful, it is very hot. I like to drop an ice cube or two in my Dutch oven to create steam, which makes the crumb very crunchy on top. So I'm going to, you can hear it sizzling already. Go ahead and put this in the oven. You're gonna do 450, you're gonna do for 40 minutes, 20 minutes with the lid on, 20 minutes with the lid off. I like to put a cookie sheet at the very bottom under it. It makes it where the bottom of the bread doesn't cook too fast and sometimes gets harder than the rest. So do yourself a favor, put a cookie sheet at the bottom to kind of absorb some of that heat. All right, our 20-minute timer just went off, so now I'm going to remove the lid and get a little peek at what it is looking like. We're gonna put it on for 20 more minutes and it will be done. Our timer just went off and our bread is done. Look at that. Once your bread is done, go ahead and take it out. Take it out of your Dutch pan immediately because you don't want the steam and the heat to create moisture and make your bread soggy. All right, as tempting as it is to immediately cut it open to see what it looks like on the inside, do not touch it. Let it cool down because you will make it very doughy inside and it will just mess it up. So let it sit on the counter until it is cooled down, and then we're gonna cut into it and see how good it came out.